I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually sit with it for a second. Have you actually thought about how you're going to die? I mean, not necessarily in a morbid way, but in a way that you've actually thought about it. Where would you be? Who would be there? Would you actually have a say in what happens to your body? These are important questions, and most of us have not even thought about that. And today's guest would tell you that's probably one of the most important things that we should do, and probably a dangerous thing not to have thought about. This is Gloves Off, and I'm your host, Dr. Kalpana Sandar, and we are broadcasting from San Diego, California. And today's guest is Bob Uslander. He spent 25 years as an ER physician, so he really was able to watch people arrive at the end of their life completely unprepared. And unfortunately, the system doesn't even prepare things for people like this. So the bottom line is he knew he had a calling, he had a purpose in life that was beyond emergency room medicine, and he left that to pursue this. So needless to say, he and I had something in common because we both left our quote unquote conventional medical careers to basically do something that was more in alignment for us. So let's welcome Dr. Bob. Hello, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you. Thanks very much. Happy to
Oh,
be here.
yes. I'm excited to get into this conversation with you. I just am excited to talk about this because it's just something that most of us don't think about. I mean, I think about it, but I think you think about it. But most people, I feel that most people, when the topic of their own death comes up, they have a fear around it. They'd rather really just avoid it at all costs. And I know this because I'm also a financial professional. So I help people with life insurance policies and things. And they don't even want to look at a life insurance policy because that makes them think that they might die one day. So people just get very uncomfortable. Is that what you've seen as
Mhm.
well?
Yeah, some people do. Some people are very excited about talking about it, actually.
Oh, wow.
There's three different groups of people. There's the people who do not want to talk about it at all costs,
Hmm.
and they don't until they're faced with it. And that ends up creating a lot of challenges for them and for their loved ones who are then caught trying to help make decisions, sometimes having to make decisions on their behalf if they
Hmm.
can't. Um, then there's people who really want to talk about it, and they're going to death cafes and they're going to events where the conversation is about planning for the end of life. And so there are people and sometimes I'll meet people when I'm out and about and they ask me what I do, and I share that I do palliative care and end of life care, and sometimes they get very excited about being able to talk with somebody who is open to talking about
Mm,
it. So there
that's
are
really
those
interesting.
those interesting individuals. Then there's a huge swath of people who they don't necessarily fear it, but they're not excited about it, but they don't have the opportunity or the sort of the inspiration to or the safe space to have these conversations. So one of the things that I like to do is create a safe space to create an opportunity for people to really start thinking about what they need to put in place to protect themselves, because the healthcare system doesn't have a mechanism really to do that. Most people don't make plans. They don't think about what they would or wouldn't want. They don't communicate what they would or wouldn't want to their loved ones. So they kind of just get pushed along by the healthcare system in its default mode.
Hmm.
And, and that often ends up creating a lot of angst and a lot of regret.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. So you had 20 something, 25 years, right, in emergency
25. Yeah.
medicine. And
Yeah.
so what did you keep seeing that you couldn't shake? I know I saw a lot of things in my career, so I'm just curious. What did you see that you just kind of just couldn't get out of your mind?
Well, one of the things that really over time became I noticed it early on, but I was young and sort of didn't have a lot of perspective. And I thought this is just the way it is. And this is what I'm taught to do. But it's, to get people who come to the hospital who probably don't have much of a chance of either surviving or surviving with any kind of meaningful quality of life, and
Hmm.
just doing everything. You do everything you can to resuscitate them, to get them stabilized,
Hmm.
just so they don't die on
Hmm.
your watch or in your ER,
Hmm.
and then they end up going to the ICU or wherever, and a lot this is sometimes happening on people who, like, they have advanced dementia, they're extremely old and frail, and you just know that the 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 chances of them having any kind of meaningful life beyond that is minimal. Um,
Well,
but we weren't in a position to do anything other than what you're taught and what the system has sort of done before. And so that over time really became extremely hard for me.
yeah,
Um,
we share the same thing. That's the thing that I saw that I couldn't take. I watched us prolong life. Me, including everybody else in the medical career, it's all about longevity. And I think really that's why I focus so much on vitality. Because for me, my life is not about longevity. Yes, I'd like to be here as long as possible, but only if I have vitality. If I don't, I'm really ready to check out. And that is
yeah,
clear. I've made that clear. I have all my documents set up to reflect my wishes, because if I'm, hobbling around and I can, I'm barely functional, I'm frail, I don't want to be here. So really, I think we share the same opinion on that it's really not necessarily always about longevity, but in the conventional medical system, that's what we're trained to look at.
right.
It's
And there's some shifts happening, which is
true.
encouraging, but it's slow, but it takes a concerted effort, and it takes people like myself and others to say, you know what, this is not the way we've been doing it isn't working. We need to look at a different way. But there's no question that some of the advances in science and healthcare have been phenomenal, and
Mhm.
we can do things that we couldn't have done 20 or 30 years ago in order to not just extend life, but extend, like, improve vitality.
Mhm.
So I'm not suggesting that we should stop trying to help people live longer,
Agreed.
but we want to make sure that if we're extending life, if we're extending life, we also want to be able to extend the period of time in which people are healthy, as
100%.
healthy as they can be, and help them and give people agency, give them agency to make decisions that are aligned with their values, and help make sure that they understand what the defaults are in the healthcare system, so
Mhm.
they don't fall into this sort of abyss that many people fall into when things change. And that's a
100%.
big part of what we're doing.
And that's it's very, very important work, actually. It really is, because there's always something missing in every system. And this is something that's really missing from ours. And you're right, it is getting better. But, and there are so many new things to help improve vitality in patients and improve their health over time. But still, at the end, when you have somebody who's extremely frail, maybe doesn't really want to be here, they're suffering in some way, then we really have to consider different options. And I think it sounds like you're looking at all of those things and helping people put together a plan for them.
Yeah, I do a lot of planning, and I think the key is clarity, is helping
Mhm.
people develop clarity about what's most important to them, what they would or wouldn't want, depend depending on the circumstances that they may find themselves in, and then document in a very meaningful way
Mhm.
where their thresholds are. You just shared with me what your thresholds are. You don't want to be hobbling around. You don't want to be having to care for you, and have when you don't have vitality.
Right.
And if you're able to tell people what you want, if you retain decision making capacity, and you haven't started losing your cognitive abilities, then you can decide for yourself
Right.
what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. Unfortunately, a lot of time people lose that ability,
Mhm.
and if they haven't given clear information to their healthcare agents, power of attorney, loved ones, then it creates a lot of potential conflict, and things the system will default into generally two different directions. One is to do too much, and they will push and keep people on this sort of conveyor belt of care and treatment, or they say move over to this way, just go for comfort care and go on hospice and don't do any more treatment and don't have access to any of that other care. And neither of those is necessarily wrong, but neither of those is necessarily right for that individual at that time. So understanding what's most important, what your values are, what you would or wouldn't want, what your thresholds are, documenting them and communicating with your loved ones and making sure they're okay with it, making sure that they're okay making those decisions on your behalf. That's when and that only comes into play if you don't have the ability to make decisions for yourself. Most of my patients that I take care of now have the ability to make their own decisions. And a lot of them are choosing not to extend their life. And I think as I shared with you, California in 2016 passed the End of Life Option Act, which allows adults that have decision-making capacity and a terminal illness with a life expectancy of less than 6 months, they can go through a legal process to get medication that, if they choose to take it, will let them go to sleep within a few minutes and die peacefully within a few hours. So it's called, people refer to as death with dignity. It's been legal in Oregon for 25 years, in California for 10 years. 75% of people in California still don't know that that's legal.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know. So that's nice that now hopefully we're going to have more awareness around that.
Yeah. And so that's one of the services that we provide for people who are terminally ill. And sometimes they want to go through that process just so they have access to something if they need it. They're not all necessarily ready to check out, but they want the peace of mind of knowing, like today, I just went to see a gentleman with ALS who has, lost the ability to use almost every part of his body except a finger, and requiring support with breathing and feeding, tube, and all of it. And he knows that at a certain point, things are going to get to the point where either he needs to be on a breathing machine for the rest of his life, or he'll, have an unpleasant death. So he wants to have the peace of mind of knowing that if he gets to that point, he has the ability to just go to sleep. Yeah. And kind of do it on his terms, have agency and dignity. And there's a whole host of reasons why people might approach that.
Yeah.
But we also have people who, they're not looking at that. They're looking at how do I have the most gentle, dignified, peaceful end of life experience, and what do I need to put in place, and who can help me to experience that? Turns out most people aren't afraid of death. Most people are afraid of dying.
That was exactly what I was sitting here thinking, because that's really my fear, of dying in some uncomfortable way. The death we all know none of us make it out of here alive. So we all know it's inevitable, but you're right. It's the process of dying that is fearful. It could be so uncomfortable, so unpleasant, so hard for our family members to watch and be around. And I recently had an experience with that, and it was very difficult. So I think that if we can make it pleasant, it really doesn't have to be as scary and as difficult as it can be. There are options now, which I think is so much of why I wanted to bring some of these, these thoughts and this information to light as much as possible. I feel like the more awareness that everybody has around it, it's important, very, very important. So we're going to continue the conversation. So this is, there's a public facing episode, but we're going to go deeper into this story, Dr. Bob and I, because your last name is longer than mine. So I'm just going to call you Dr. Bob. we're going to go. So I'm going to put up the link to the private community. So this is how you can join, so you can see the remainder of the episode, because certain things just really don't belong on social media. And in my opinion, most of the conversations I have don't really belong there. So you're welcome to join the private community, and we will see you